Hello, hello, hello. I'm making a video. Coming back tomorrow to the internet. So, but we got some things done here, and that is really, really good. We're moving forward, so that's always good. So, Paul and I talked a lot and was painful again, and it's frustrating for me to talk to him. Very difficult to talk to him because he's almost deaf and the hearing aids don't work well. They keep falling out of the ears. Then they make squealing sounds. Then he is also very hard-headed and he doesn't hear things because he also has ADHD. All of this makes it very, very difficult. But the hard-headedness, that's really the absolute. That makes a conversation really, really, really problematic. So, to say the least, I mean, that makes it very difficult to talk to someone when they are so set in their ways and they don't even want to really listen to what the other person says, and they cut someone else off all the time, don't even let the other person finish. So that's very frustrating, to say the least. So we talked about investment and stuff like that, and I was bringing up what Warren Buffett said, that it is good to invest into real estate, into particularly land properties, if you have the investment funds. Okay, so we don't have much of an investment fund, but that's definitely the direction we are going. So when we invest, it will definitely be into land properties, so for sure. And I think that's a very good advice that Warren Buffett gave, and I thank him for that. And it makes a lot of sense, because whatever happens in the future, if you have a land property, you can grow your own food. And when you have food, it doesn't really matter whether there's a depression or anarchy or whatever is happening. Let's say in big cities, for example. If you live in a rural area and you have your own land property and you grow your own food, then you are not going to be affected at all by a depression or inflation or chaos, whatever, or governmental shutdowns or whatever might happen, or even electric power outages and power shutdowns for whatever length of time. If you have your land property and you are off the grid, you have your own water supply through wells, and you have your own electricity generator, right? And you have solar panels, then you are completely independent from the infrastructure, and that's the way you survive things. My mother, we were talking about what my mother said to me, and Paul didn't forget that. He mentioned what my mother said, that during the Depression in the 30s and 40s, 1930s and 1940s, that was a very, very difficult time worldwide. And particularly in Germany, it was very, very difficult, because Germany lost a World War One, okay, and they went into a very deep depression. There was a barter system starting to come up, and people were just trading items. The money had gone into an inflation. Money was becoming worthless. it was very difficult. People didn't have food to eat in the cities, particularly those people that didn't even know how to grow food, or people that are like architects or doctors even, people that normally make a lot of money, but they had nothing to trade, they had nothing to eat. Maybe they had a Persian rug, right, that they had collected, they may have collected some artwork and stuff like this, and then they had that to trade in for a couple of loaves of bread or something like that. It was very, very difficult. But the farmers out there, they did not lose weight. They were not skin and bones. But everyone else was skin and bones. That's the truth. It's the fact, okay? So this should teach us something about sustainability. And we need to take that very, very seriously. We can't just be like babies and rely on our governing forces. Right now we have it very good with the good Samaritans being in office, okay? But in a democratic political system, which we are supposed to have, but of course the ones that called themselves Democrats, they were not very democratic. They were dictators. They were tyrannical dictators. But with this overall democracy that we have, I can't put this in straight terms. I mean, it's a wishful thinking democracy, right? With that situation, the president can be in office for, let's say, 2 terms. And if they can push it further, maybe maximally a 3rd term, right? That's 8 years plus 4 years makes 12 years, okay? And after that, they have to sign out. There will be a new election, and then people will vote again, and then because the corporate agenda will never let off with their propaganda, they know how to lure people into the voting for the wrong person, and then they might vote for the wrong person again after this legislation is over. At some point, people might vote for the wrong person again. I hope they don't, but this is a very risky situation with the corporate agenda doing brain manipulation and making people vote for the wrong person. So it's very risky business. So, and then let's say if another person comes in, I don't even want to say the name, but someone who should be in an insane asylum, like whatever these people are, Obama, Biden, Gavin Newsom, whatever, Van Jones, or Bill Gates, whatever their names are, okay? Those are all betrayers. Those are all greedy betrayers. That's what they are. And let's say someone like that comes into office. They will bring it back down, as I talked about it last night. They will bring it back down to anarchy, to the state what Joe Biden criminals have done. And they have done it over the head of Joe Biden even. Joe Biden was not mentally in the mental capacity to oversee anything, and they also bypassed him. They had this is public. This has been investigated, and this is a fact. They they have used a printing type of thing or some kind of automated signature print from Joe Biden. They have completely bypassed that man. That's what I thought they did. That was so obvious. They bypassed him and they had this automated system create a signature, an imitated signature of Joe Biden, and he doesn't even know it, that they did that. Because there are some things where Joe Biden would, for example, would not have, which he would not have signed. Joe Biden would not have signed that they take security and the protections away from Robert Kennedy. Okay. Joe Biden would not have signed that. Joe Biden wanted Robert Kennedy to be protected. Okay, so he didn't have anything against him and he respected him. But the Biden criminals, the ones that took advantage of that situation of Biden being demented, they just bypassed him and they used this automated system to sign that signature behind the back of Joe Biden without him even knowing it. And they signed the security away from Robert Kennedy because they were afraid of Robert Kennedy. So whoever they were afraid of, they're afraid of all the good, kind people that make the world better. So because of that, they wanted to take the security away from him and put him at risk of being assassinated. That's how criminal these Biden criminals are. Okay, and if they come, if things are unlucky and they come back in, then this is a very difficult situation, and they can ruin the country and bring things into total chaos and anarchy. I pray to the blue God that this does not happen again. Okay, so let's pray to the infinite cosmos that this does not happen again, ever again. And that's all we can do, and we need to pay attention. Okay, we need to pay attention to the political system and who we vote for, that we don't vote for a criminal. Okay, so please vote for the good people. Vote for Donald Trump. Vote for Elon Musk. Vote for Robert Kennedy and Tulsi Gabbard. Vote for those that care. Captain Paul Watson, Ingrid Newkirk, Wayne Purcell. Those people that care about animals and justice. Okay? Those are the ones we need to vote for. And if we have land property, so if a bad situation happens, we will be basically unaffected by that situation. So we have to always keep that in mind, that we become completely independent and self-sustainable. Okay, so we can sustain our own life cycle, our own living, and lifestyle, and growing food and having dogs. Okay, we need to feed our dogs. So this is very, very important. We have to think about all of these things and not rely on a situation where in a democracy there's a rotation happening on who is in office. Okay, so if there's a good person in office, at some point that term ends, and then there will be another election, and then it's a very risky situation. I wish the Good Samaritans could be our permanent governing bodies. Okay, this would be a dictatorship, but a benevolent dictatorship, and that's what we really need. So that's why Ray Kurzweil said he was quoting Benjamin Franklin. I think that's who he said. It was Benjamin Franklin, I think, who said that democracy is the worst of all systems, except for all the other systems. So, with other words, democracy is still the best system that we have. Okay. And I disagree with that because I sent records for my short story, the Reign of the Red Ones. Wrote a short story. Well, that was like 15 years ago or something. And I sent it to him, and I think that he did not like that short story because it probably reminded him of the Holocaust. And I don't want my short stories or my philosophy to remind anyone of the Holocaust or the Hitler regime. Okay, so, and no one really has an idea of what actually was going on with Adolf Hitler and what he actually wanted. Okay, so there's a lot of extra hate against Adolf Hitler, and he's like a scapegoat. Adolf Hitler is the scapegoat of the whole world. If someone made a mistake, let's just blame Adolf Hitler for it, and so it's the ultimate scapegoat. That's not okay. That is definitely not okay, because Adolf Hitler had good intentions. Okay, he wanted to rescue Germany from the depression and from the inflation and from this incredible disaster and this hardship of the area post World War I. Okay, so he wanted to help, and he had certain ideas on how to help. Okay, these were just ideas, and they were put into manifestation. At least he tried. Okay, so what else can you do other than try? Okay, and then there's all these other people, and there's all these other entities, and also entire conglomerations of people that see their opportunities and stuff in a situation like that, and also see an opportunity to completely character assassinate someone and create a situation which ultimately blames then that person that is in charge at that moment. Okay. And basically frame that person with a bunch of stuff while they're enriching themselves at the same time. And that is exactly what happened. It's very tragic what happened there, and it's all misunderstood, and it's all being misconstructed into the same old story of there are certain demographics that feel victimized by that regime, and they will cling to that idea of being victimized, or their people being victimized, or their ancestors being victimized, and then they will blame the other people that have the other genes ad infinitum, forever and ever and ever, no matter what new generations come out of that, and they'll keep on blaming them, right? And that's not a good thing to do. So just perpetuating victimhood narratives and even completely misconstructed ideas about certain regimes, and it's very sad, it's very unfortunate. It should not happen. So, but anyway, Paul and I, we were talking earlier about depression and what happens, and that we have to secure ourselves, and we have to not be so reliant on a governing body or system. Okay, no matter who is in charge, just don't become completely complacent and reliant on it. So, and as we were talking, and he is very fixated on what he has been told, that, or what he has been led up to believe, that everything is, he thinks everything is linear, everything is finite, everything is just materialistic, everything is 3D, three-dimensionally, and he thinks there is no other dimension. So he probably accepts the two-dimensionality of this this video monitor here, which creates an illusion of depths, but it is obviously happening in a two-dimensionality type of digital system, but two-dimensionality is really completely theoretical and mathematical. It's not tangible, it's not really perceivable with our senses. So it is an idea. That's all it basically is. Two-dimensionality. Even this monitor is not a two-dimensionality, but it has the characteristics of that, the monitor itself. But then if you look at the monitor, obviously it's the whole monitor is made out of particles, and these particles are within the realm of the three-dimensionality. And that is which we live in. We live in a three-dimensionality. Yes, baby dog. But that doesn't mean that the other dimensions don't exist, obviously. And the mathematicians have been working on that and have proven that to us. So, Paul, I need your help. Paul. That is a bummer that I have to get up now. And no. Can you come on the bed? Can you come on the bed? Can you come on? That would be good. You come on the bed there. Okay. I thought I had to get up and let him out. But be easy on me, baby dog. Yes, you have to be always easy. You need to be easy, because the claws, they can scratch on my skin. Yes, they cannot be thrown just so wildly around and all of that. Yes, we need to be easy on those claws and all of that. That is very important. Yes, that is important. That's very important. Okay. So, and as Paul and I, as we were talking earlier in the living room, be easy, baby dog. Be easy. As we were talking, I could see that he tightens himself onto the three-dimensionality, the linearity, the finality of this perceived world that we live in. Okay. And I say perceived world. It is not the ultimate existence. Yes, he is in here. It's all good. It's all good. Yes, yes, he is. Now leave the door gap open. Okay. We have the heat on. It's cold. Okay. I'm in the middle of making a video. So yeah, I already ate some bean salad. So I don't know. I don't digest beans too well, but one can get used to it. Some beans don't bother me that much. So I don't like to eat refried beans, so they always cause intestinal upset. So we were talking in the living room, and I could see how he is fixated on all of this. He's fixated on this, on the materialistic world. He's fixated on the Newtonian physics. And yes, this is the world we live in, but the other dimensions are still there. But there are still weird things happening. There are still anomalies happening. There are still incongruencies happening. There are still weird things and strange things happening in this world. And when people can't explain that, when sometimes maybe a yogi will start floating, Jiddu Krishnamurti talked about, he saw that. He saw this happening in someone's house in South India. They had a meeting, and they usually they eat sitting on the floor. That is an Indian tradition. I've eaten like this one time in Geneva. That was very interesting. And in an apartment with a bunch of people from India. It was very interesting. But what was missing was the hot climate. It was in the middle of winter. But Jiddu Krishnamurti saw that during one dinner, sitting with people together in a diamond seat, diamond with the legs across each other, sitting on the floor, eating. And all of a sudden this yoga man, I think a yogi type of person, that was sitting in a lotus position where the feet are actually on top of the thighs. So it's kind of like a twisted, knotted type of sitting position. So the feet are on top of, or partly on the side on top of the upper thighs. So folded over like that. And in that position, he was going into a meditation. And in that meditation, he started to levitate. And he started to float across the entire group and sit next to Jiddu Krishnamurti on an empty place. Yeah, these things happen. And then I knew a woman in LA, Lynn Hobart. She worked with Steven Spielberg and other people. She used to be an actress. I hope she's doing well, because she's about 20 years older than me, and she had health problems and was an alcoholic. So I sent her love and well wishes. We were good friends. I met her through my whale petitioning at the Whole Foods market in LA. I met a bunch of very interesting people there. And we became good friends, and she told me all about her heyday of the hippie movement, and when she was young, and the different parties and meeting actors and Spielberg and different people that she worked with. She was also a photo model. She was Swedish. I think she was from Sweden, actually. And so she was very popular with everyone because of her incredible looks. And she said she knew Jiddu Krishnamurti because she has been to those high-end parties in Malibu, knew a bunch of people there, where he was invited. And there was one house where he had a permanent room that was reserved for him, just as an honorary room for him to come over anytime he wanted. And he had a bunch of people like this that welcomed him in their homes at any time he wanted and could stay for any length he wanted. And so he was there for a while, for like a week, and they had talks and discussions as they always had. And Lynn was there too. She told me all about this. And she was, I don't, she was like in her late 20s. And before they started on the dinner, where they would all come together for the dinner, eat together on a very large table, she was getting her stuff together, and she needed to go to the restroom, was looking for the restroom. And she opens the wrong door. She opened the door that Shri Krishnamurti was staying in that room. And she was absolutely shocked. She opens the door, and he was in a lying down position, but floating like 5 feet above the bed, and in very deep meditation, 5 feet above the bed. And she sees under him on the bed a book, like a love book, like a sexy Juliet romance book. And this impression of this man floating, and under him this romance book, she couldn't get that out of her head. And she quickly closed the door because that scared her very much. So when they got together on the dinner table, she asked him, when I opened that door, and I closed the door fast because that scared me so much when I saw you floating, did that make you come back down to the bed? Did that somehow startle you? Did that make you fall on the bed? What happened? And he said no, that didn't bother him at all. And then she asked him, I saw that you have a regular Juliet romance novel under the bed, lying down on the mattress. And why would you, when you are such a yogi, why do you read such ordinary love romances? And he said he's also a man. He is a yogi, but he's also made out of flesh and hormones and all of that, and he likes to sometimes read a kitschy old love romance book that inspires him to have pleasure, right? So he is also a human. He's a living being, an animal too, at the same time. And he himself talked about that a lot also. He talked about this to David Bohm and other people, and he told David Bohm that when he is in India, where they don't talk about anything about physical pleasure and sex and all of that, it's always swept under the rug in India. They seem to have a lot of shame with that. He said in India it talks about it all the time with people because they need it. He brings it up all the time because they obviously really need to get used to this, and they need to get used to the idea that we are animals and we are not somehow on some kind of pedestal above the other beings. So you can see the ear is itching. Yes, the ear is itching, and it is. He looks like he's smiling, but it's not. It's more like. So I'm gonna have to, after this video, I'm gonna have to get baby wipes. Yes, I am. He's trying to push his fingernail into the ear. That's not good. No, that's not good at all. I'm gonna have to get a baby wipe with peachy scent. And I'm gonna have to wipe the ears out real good. And after that, I'm gonna have to wipe Equate Vapor Rub into the entire ear, under the ear flap, and into all the crevices and into the ear canal, as far as I can get that in with my little finger. So I'm gonna have to do that next. yeah, this is an ongoing problem with the ear mites and the itching. That's not good. It's a chronic problem. It's real bad. And I think these Staffordshire, American Staffordshires, they have these problems. That's what I heard. So, but anyway, getting back to the discussion with Paul earlier in the living room, we were talking about all of this. We're talking about selling this house and what we need to take into consideration, how we need to move things around, what we need to move out of here next, and what needs to be shoveled around, and who do we contact first? Who do we talk to? But we finally came to the conclusion we have to go through this specific realtor who has already done an awful lot of spending time on Paul and us over the years. We thought that he didn't want to be selling people's houses anymore, so we got the impression, so that's why we went to other realtors in the meantime. But we had to come back to him because he's the only reliable one. He's the only honest one in this entire community. So we just had to come back to him and say that we want to get that started now. He's probably going to have to do a multiple listing because we thought we could sell the house and we could find a cash buyer. But it's easier said than done, all of that, obviously. And most cash buyers, they want to just pay half. Okay, that's all there is to it. It's not easy. This whole thing, it's not easy to be on your own when it comes to business and when it comes to managing your life and finances and all of that. It's not easy at all. Not at all. But Paul and I, we put both of our heads together. He is the linear thinker like Elon Musk. He is the rational thinker, and I and he talks about reality a lot, which I take the word reality obviously with an eye twinkle, because reality has a lot of strangeness in it that we can't explain. But I know that this can be explained with the other dimensions that are always there at the same time, okay? And there are ETs out there, and there are entities. It's there. The CERN nuclear accelerator even has done experiments with that, with entities. And they found out that there are entities, and there will never be an empty space. That the idea of an empty space is an illusion. Okay, there's never empty space anywhere. Okay, we think it is empty. They suck everything else out. They create the so-called vacuum. But how much of a vacuum is there when we don't even know all the subatomic particles yet? There are even more subatomic particles, and more and more and more. There's even more energy that we haven't explored. Then how can we call something a vacuum? Only to the vacuum in relation to what we know, right? So take a vacuum cleaner, you suck some dust out of something, there's still not the vacuum in there. There's still all kinds of particles. You can do this with an incredible vacuumizer that they use, okay, with particle vacuum cleaner. And there's still energy, there's still subatomic action in there. So there will go in indefinitely. There's indefinitely more energy and particles. That's a fact. Okay, it will never end. There is no end in any direction with anything, and that is the part that is very difficult for scientists to accept. Is the endlessness of stuff, and that's very difficult for Paul. For someone who is a very linear thinker, it's very difficult to accept for him. But I accept that it is difficult for him. I accept his inability of accepting indefiniteness. So that's just a fact of life that I have to accept, and I have to just live with that, okay, and make the best out of it as I can, as I possibly can in a conversation with Paul. So then he said he should have invested in gold when we first came to the Pacific Northwest. And we were first in Reno, and I got electric shocked. I got these blue electric shocks. Okay, there's a lot of energy there, a lot more energy than we even wanted to believe. And we were living in a motorhome with our former dog Samantha. And it was nice in Reno, but I constantly got these electric shocks. And then I thought, I need to go back to the ocean where the air is moist, where I don't get these electric shocks. So we turned around and went over that Donna Pass. It's a horrible, horrible freeway, and horrible history, horrible, depressing and sad. Okay, that Donna Pass. I don't ever want to go over that Donna Pass again. But yeah, we went back to the ocean because I constantly got these blue shocks. It was incredibly awful. And Paul never got a blue shock. I wonder why that is. And it was painful. It was hurting my bones. It was so bad. I didn't even get all the way to the metal. Like, I'm in the motorhome where there's static electricity built up through these very highly charged electric winds that are very dry winds in Reno. It was May 2025. That's when that happened. Okay, and I would get like over an inch away from the metal, and a blue arrow would shoot out of the metal into my skin, into wherever I was getting close, into my skin and into my bones. But not just into the bones there where I was near the metal, but into all the bones. It was incredible. I couldn't believe it. I'd never experienced anything like this before. It was awful. So that's why we came back to the ocean, or we would have stayed there. We were already almost there, where I want to be forever, right? We were almost there. Not quite, but we were almost there in Reno. And I already liked it there so much. There are hot springs and all of that. But anyway, we came back, and when we came back to the Pacific Northwest, Paul looks back and regrets that he did not invest the money from selling the house in LA into gold and silver. Because he said, had I invested into that, we would be millionaires now, multi-millionaires. We might have $3 million or $4 million by now. Okay? But I didn't feel comfortable investing into it. And I told him at that time, I said, I have never dealt with something like this. My grandfather was a stamp collector. I wouldn't even feel comfortable with that either. So, but my grandfather made it with that. But I wouldn't feel comfortable with that. And I wouldn't feel comfortable with gold and silver or coins or gold bars or any of that. So Blue God agrees. 4444. That's the truth, what I'm saying. And I don't know how comfortable Paul would have been with this, or this. I just felt like investing in something like this with a major investment, let's say putting half of your money in, or let's say putting $300,000 into it. You can be lucky and it can function. But what if you invest into it and you got tricked and shystered, and the gold bars turn out to be fake, or the coins, right? I mean, what are you gonna do then? Or if something happens and that becomes useless or something. It's very risky when you want to invest, particularly when you're hoping to invest into it using half or more of your money. So particularly when you don't have that much to begin with. So, and when you need that what you have to live on for the rest of your life, to make it through with food and all of that. So it's not easy, these decisions that we're making. So I wanted to change the subject into a more hopeful subject. But I said, yeah, we definitely need to invest into land. That's what I feel comfortable with, and that's what I stick with. Susie Orman is an investor who always said that you have to invest into something you feel 100% comfortable and safe with. And I really take that to heart, what she said. So I feel very strongly about land and real estate, very strongly. I feel like that is something that will never, ever let off in value. Quite the opposite. Okay, there will be more and more and more humans, more and more demand for housing and so on. And living space in general. And food also, if you invest into agricultural land and you grow your own food, or you're starting to expand a business in that direction, which are all thoughts that I have in my mind. Okay, I have a lot of thoughts, I have a lot of fantasies and ideas about creating something, not just for our sustainability, not just for our financial situation, but for making the world a better place, for creating something that has not been created yet, or has not been made in this way, which I am thinking about. Okay, something, if there is something something you want that does not exist in the world, then you have to bring it into existence. Okay, and that is my hope for the future, that I can create something, that I can create a couple of things that have not been manifested, or that have been made but not in the quality, not in the quality of life that it can offer. Okay, so there are things I want to create: better food items, better cosmetic, better clothes. Okay, these are things that are going through my mind. But you can only start where you are at. If you don't have a start capital, you have to be very, very careful on how you invest that fund that you were lucky enough to get in the first place, So very, very lucky. We need to be extremely, infinitely grateful for what we have. If you have something, whatever you have, you need to be grateful for. You need to be infinitely grateful for it. And I tell you something very important here. Money, or some kind of monetary entity, whatever that is, okay, an exchange entity, a trade entity. That's not your dictator. It is your baby. You need to baby it. You need to nurse it. You need to nurture it. You could be growing apple trees. That's a currency. Okay? It's also a trade currency. It is. Okay? All kinds of things can be a trade currency. It's an energy of exchange. And we need to be grateful for it, and we need to treat it with utmost gratitude and care. And it's the truth, as we should with everything around us, with absolutely everything, with fabrics that you can make into a pillowcase, fabrics that other people would throw away because it may have been an old broken sheet, right? But if you are inventive, you make something out of it. It is material. It's a resource. You make something out of it. Listen to Madame Vivienne Westwood, fashion designer. Great role model for me. Great role model for all of us, really. Okay? Very important. But anyway, before I turn the video off, I want to finally do the punchline here in what I was talking to Paul about. So he's like clinging to this. I should have invested in gold. So I said to him, the ETs that came down here, he first didn't hear because he doesn't hear well. And then his mind is still on investing. And I just rattled away. And I said, the ETs that came here a long time ago that created the pyramids, they probably brought gold with them, or they also gathered some gold here on Earth. They were probably able to get some gold, hopefully not with chemicals, but they may have also brought gold from outer space. And they had massive amounts of gold, actually. And they created super capacitors with that gold. And this is what people later called the covenant. Okay, the covenant. I don't even know how they come up with such a word. Some people called them sarcophagi covenants. What does it even mean, a covenant? A coven, like something that a container that contains something. It's hollow on the inside. So why did they create those? A person would not fit in it. It was just half the size of a person. So it's not a sarcophagus. It's not a whatever. What's the modern word for that? Like a coffin, okay, where you put a dead person in it. No, that's not what it was made for. The pyramids in general were not made for that. They were not made for people being put in there for indefinite mummification, or that was not the original purpose. The original purpose was these pyramids were created as power stations. They were power plants. And the gold is the capacitor, is the battery that charges itself up with sunlight, okay, through the tip of the pyramids. There would be that's why they had a prisma on the top, a crystal prisma, where the sunlight would shine into it and be funneled all the way down through the pyramid into a shaft, all the way to the bottom of the shaft where the covenant was standing. and the sunlight was beamed into that covenant, into that gold sarcophagus covenant chest, a gold chest, right, of epic proportions, and made very well, so very ornamental. And they had their symbolism on it. They had dragon symbols and different things, and ET symbols on it, on those covenants. And people later on made it into something else. They fabricated some kind of story into it and said that covenant is some kind of entity, and you need to worship it, and all. You need to treat it well, but that is not a conscious entity like an AI or a person that governs over people. No, it's an energy storage system. That's what it is. It stores sunlight, and the sunlight is in this covenant through all that these masses of gold. They can hold that energy from the sunbeams, and transform it into electricity. And from there, the covenant was this capacitor, this battery, that was storing massive amounts of electricity, even in just one covenant, one chest. Massive amounts of electricity, and the hollow space on the inside also harbored all of this electricity. And with this electricity, they could power an entire community and beyond. And not only that, they powered other pyramids and other people's dwelling spaces. This was also used as a cable network, an internet form of matrix and network that these covenants were able to create. The covenants were basically also made into entire information storage systems, like a supercomputer. And from there, information was being sent or beamed in with almost like with laser beam precision from one place to another, and then all the way in a complete network of these type of pyramids. And a long time ago, let's say 1,000,000 years ago or so, this is just a rough idea, or whenever that happened, when they created the pyramids in Giza, but they created pyramids all the way around the globe, not just in Egypt. Many pyramids are there all the way around the entire planet, and they're being dug up one after another. They had been scattered and layered over and over with debris, to the point where trees were growing on it, where they would not be recognized as pyramids anymore. Some people would recognize the shape of the pyramid and say, "Oh, that looks like a pyramid," And then other people will say, geologists will say, "No, that's just a natural formation that formed itself like this. You see, there are trees growing on it." But what if it is very, very old? 1,000,000 or several million years old. Then, of course, trees can eventually grow on it, right? If you never vacuum your house, eventually, or if trees grow into your house, they will shed leaves and they will fall on the rug, and eventually the rug dissolves and there will be just dirt, right? And there will be plants growing out of it. So the same thing happens. So, but some archaeologists started to excavate and they find there are megalithic structures underneath that are actually the raw pyramid underneath. Okay, they're finding more and more and more. So there was an entire network of pyramids around the whole planet, and these pyramids were communicating with each other. They were communicating energy and information as well. And that was an internet, a global internet. And it was free electricity from the sun. Okay, that was a system much more useful, much safer, and much more genius than what humans have ever created here on Earth in terms of a power grid system. Okay, so, and I was trying to convey this to Paul, and he would, what? No, I wasn't listening, and I explained it again, and then he's like, "Oh, you do this again with your flying saucer stuff," and that ended the conversation. But I had a good monologue to myself. Anyway, now I shared it on the computer, at least. Peace and love for all living beings. You don't have to believe it, but I do.